Here at the Independence Reformed Bible Church, we allow for questions following the sermon. Who has the first question this morning? John.
Just a follow-up on that Deuteronomy chapter 8. Just a little bit further on in 18. But you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is He who is giving you the power to make wealth, to make money, to make a living, to create things and bring order. Okay, so He's giving you that power, that He may confirm His covenant, which He swore to your fathers as it is this day. So it's part of the covenant. The covenant, the mandate, is a covenant. And then it goes on, it just reissues the warnings. If you forget that you will perish like the nations before you. So it's over and over.
Yeah. It's as if if we love Christ, we can His providential ordering of the universe will support us. But if we turn away from Him, He takes His hand away, and here comes the chaos. And then it's just destruction. There just is. It's one of the reasons why one of the things about the J.K. Rowling books, the Harry Potter books, was very disturbing to me. She, at points in those books, makes chaos to be a good thing. She does. You know, the stairs one day go up to a different spot. You know, you come into Hogwarts Academy, right? And everything's out of place. And it's like really cool. Chaos is cool. That's one of the disturbing things about it. There's other disturbing things. But she tries to do that, tries to make chaos cool. How about you, J.K. Rowling? Next time you're on your word processor, you hit a Q and a W comes up. How would that work for you? Yeah, Dave.
Can I go through chapter 12? Because I want to understand, just recap a little bit. Do you mind?
Yeah, that's all right. I know I'm going through it a little fast because we got to get to 13 and 14, but go ahead.
So the woman was Old Testament Israel, right?
Believing Israel. I want to make that distinction. For example, we have Simeon and Anna, for example, believers. At this time, the priesthood itself was corrupt, even at this point. I'm sorry, but go ahead.
Clothed with the Son, which would have been God Himself, right? Illumination.
Clothed with the Son, I believe, is the and the moon is the commandments of God, if you will. That's where you had to go. If you, and I think Deuteronomy 4 makes that point. Where are we going to go to find the true God? It's going to come through Israel. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So then Christ was born. The second sign, a great red dragon with 7 heads, 10 horns. Did you address that?
I did not. I will address that in later chapters because we see that dragon coming up later on. It's a representation of Satan, of the certain aspects of him demonstrated by the 7 heads and 10 horns that we're gonna address.
So, and then the woman fled into the wilderness. That would be the New Testament church, right?
Yeah, and well, it is, but you got to remember it's believing Jews and Gentiles. Yeah, it's mostly believing Jews at this point, mostly, because even at this point, I mean, we have the modern movement, Jews for Jesus, which is an interesting. You know, I like the title, but really the original church, if you will, in the New Testament was pretty much Jews for Jesus, pretty much. Very few Gentiles. Some Hellenized Jews had become converted Jews, then became believers in Christ. But anyway.
Okay. And then Satan. So you would believe Satan was in heaven up until 65, 68 AD?
Yeah.
That he lived in heaven with God up until that point?
I don't know if he lived, but I think, and this is very difficult. Theologians really wrestle with this. but I believe he had some sort of access at that point that he was later denied. Just like he had access in Job chapters 1 and 2. Some sort of access, some sort of opportunity to talk with God that he no longer had when this is going on.
So then he was thrown to the earth, but then after 70 AD he was bound. So he only had a short period of time where he was able to wreak havoc?
The binding, I believe, is and we'll see this later in Revelation, I believe the binding is his ability to fool the nations. We see that later, and it's very specifically said in Revelation.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. They no longer deceive the nations. As the gospel goes out, he's bound over time. I believe the binding is not a one-time thing. I believe it happens like a Normandy invasion, if you will. The gospel goes out, and his space and time are limited.
All right. I think that, because this is kind of it's kind of laid out in like four different steps.
Yeah, and I actually believe there's descriptions of the same things going on there. For example, she flees in the wilderness, and later on we have more of a description of how that. I think you see that type of writing throughout the book of Revelation. All this has happened, I believe, during the seventh trumpet. You have a parenthetical thing going on there, which you're going to see in the other ones as well. All this is happening. But later on, we're definitely going to get more of the identity of why 7 heads, 10 horns. And of course, my point here being that those who, it's an amazing thing, those who want to bring light and scripture, and even I mentioned reading, will always be opposed by people that are just into power. I forget which author pointed this out, that the Egyptians, an extremely powerful dynasty, were very, very strict on reading. Only the priests, only the people that ran things could read, because they knew that if regular folks learned how to read, that would cut into their ability to control other people. This is a pretty big thing. Powerful people always oppose the advance of the gospel, and the advance of the gospel is always accompanied by the proliferation of knowledge. Always. Proliferation of knowledge is necessary to exercise dominion over the earth. Thankfully, you and I didn't have to learn every single thing in the world, right? When we came into the world, there were other people that came before, and we read their books. We use their wisdom. Oh, John.
Comment in verse 5 of Revelation 12, the male child who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. I have a note in my margins here that the word rule in the Greek is actually shepherd, which is an interesting, gives a different flavor
Yeah.
to, ruling with a rod of iron is one thing. Shepherding, shepherds all have rods. All the shepherds had rods. But shepherd with a rod of iron, it's just a little bit different reading.
Yeah. If you're the one being protected by the rod of iron, good. If you're on the receiving end, not so good. The wolf on the other end. Thank you. Yes?
One other thing, and I hesitate to bring it up, but I'm going to anyway. In Chilton's book, Days of Vengeance, where he goes through the book of Revelation, he's in agreement with your outlook, but in this verse, or in this section here, he superimposes on that some astrological information, that the sign appeared in heaven. So we're looking at the stars.
Right. The stars are 12 stars mentioned.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
The woman appeared, and what he goes to is the Virgo, the constellation, clothed with the sun. The 12 stars on her head. It's all part of the and I can't go through all of the astrological parts. That with the moon at her feet, there's in astrology, if you had Virgo clothed in the sun, okay, close to the sun,
right,
the sun overshadowing the stars, it's very difficult to see. With the moon at her feet, he places a timing on the birth of Christ
Okay.
based on the astrology to where he takes the birth actually into September. Actually, I think it's September 25. The dragon, another constellation, comes in that timing. It's just a very interesting approach to what's this all talking about. It more or less agrees with what you're saying, but it's a different.
He's talking about a sign.
Yeah, and the signs in the heavens.
Yeah. I have seen that exact thing. I don't know enough about astronomy to jump into it either way, but I do know that there's only one. It's very intriguing because I believe Chilton and others, I think with some justification, say that that is the sign in the heaven that brought them to Bethlehem to begin with.
Magi.
Right.
Right.
Did I say that we had the wise men? Yeah.
Yeah, wise men.
Yeah.
The Magi, the magicians,
Yes.
were the ones who understood the seasons and the times. They were considered magicians because they could predict eclipses and things like that, but they understood the movements of the stars
Right.
and the planets.
Yeah. One thing we do
Very
know-
close, the reading was a very closely guarded secret in Egypt.
Yeah.
This was a very closely guarded secret among the Magi.
Yeah. You can control people with eclipses and so forth.
Yes.
I mean, that'd be pretty crazy if you could like get them to tell people, if you could, people do, you aren't giving enough money to the temple or whatever, and I'm going to curse the sun and it's going to disappear. People didn't know anything about that, eclipses and so forth. Man, you could really control people. It would be excellent. We do know this, that in terms of in terms of the constellations, and I've read a little bit about this stuff. One of the interesting things about the constellations is all cultures apparently have the same constellations, which is kind of amazing. I mean, the stars look pretty random to me. It seems like to me like you can do pretty much anything with them, but they all have the same ones, apparently. That's the first thing. The second thing is there's only one female. There's the seven sisters, but there's only one individual female. All the rest are animals or men. And there are, from what I understand, there were things that happened with the constellation Virgo about that time that just had never happened before or since. So I think there is support for Chilton there. Is his work online? Yes. Okay.
Days of Vengeance.
Days of Vengeance is online. You can read more about that.
It works better if you've read, what's the one in Paradise that you read?
Paradise Lost.
No,
Paradise
that's
Restored?
Norton's. Paradise Restored?
That's one book.
Yeah. He wrote Paradise Restored first,
Yeah.
and then he wrote Days of Vengeance. If you understand Days of Vengeance better if you read Paradise Restored first.
There you go, guys. It's not good enough to read one book. You got to read two. But hey, it's worth it. Yes, Dave.
Comment on the battle of Michael, the archangel, and Satan. Weren't there Jewish historians, Seth, that you mentioned in your series in 70 AD, where those were actually chariots of fire and stuff in the heavens at that time that would equate to that battle?
Well, yeah, it depends whether or not you place that as a fulfillment, but you have Josephus writing that there's a number of people actually that write between approximately 60 to 70 AD, a number of signs going on in the heavens like that, seeing battles and chariots and fire and warriors and not just one or two accounts, but you have accounts of many people seeing the same things happening in the heavens above Jerusalem specifically. And so, whether you equate that to the fulfillment or whether you equate that to some of the birth pang signs in Matthew 24, either way it's significant.
And hearing it as well, right?
Right, yeah, it wasn't just lightning. I mean, these were detailed accounts of, yeah, this is what I saw, yeah, that's what I saw too, yeah, I heard these wars going on, I heard these things being said in heaven, and, verification from many people in and around Jerusalem of these events.
Because I think Kaiser uses that in his commentary,
He does.
saying that the actual battle between Satan and Michael the Archangel were visible from Earth.
Yeah, he references that as possibilities for sure. I certainly think that's possible. one thing we know is that when Christ came, there was all kinds of angels. From the very beginning, there was like angelic activity. You have an angel telling Joseph to get down to Egypt. You have angels showing up in the sky. That just didn't happen every day. And there was definitely all manner of activities in the skies, not just the sky. At one point, you have the priests later on saying they heard these voices in the temple that you got to get out. I forget exactly what it was like. Just get out of here. This type of thing. It was going on all over the place. It's one of the, as we've mentioned before, the great frustration we have. This has not been taught in our Christian circles. I mean, I had a history class in college. We never even touched this. We just went right past it. We had secular textbooks, right? And that's all we were doing, is reading the secular textbook. That was it. And I had paid no attention to the birth of Christ, no attention to his death and resurrection. It was a Bible college I was into, and secular textbook, blip, gone, done, whatever. Let's talk about the glory that was Greece and the grandeur that was Rome. Whatever. What a waste of time. Yes?
One more comment on the aspect of the stars, and regardless of revealing that, it is interesting if you continue to read and look into that, and the argument that's being made by Chilton and others on those facts is that has not happened since, and it didn't happen before. One of the arguments goes beyond that, then goes right back to what you talked about in the beginning, chaos versus order. The argumentation there is the fact is that the reason they can go back and map that and say that actually happened is because the stars and planets move in such precise movements that they can track it. That's how you can determine where something's going to be in the sky at a particular time, because it moves on a specific cycle. It's created that way. And their point is that if that is true and that actually happened, that the reality then is the entire created universe was created from the beginning to make one massive announcement to the entire created universe. That's a pretty amazing thing when you think about that. God created the universe for the specific purpose of announcing Christ given to mankind.
From the beginning. That's what we just read. Those who keep the testimony of Christ. And they kept the testimony of Christ in the Old Testament as well as the New. It was always the testimony of Christ. Good. All right, I want to thank you again for your kind attention here this morning.